going to wait for one more of our trustees so we can get started. And slowly but surely, we're starting to get an audience. Just a quick reminder, we are streaming live on Facebook, and you can also find us on YouTube and, of course, on this webinar today. So thank you so much for being here this evening. We will be getting started in the next minute or so. All right, everybody, we are going to get started. Good evening, and thank you so much for being here with us again. This is our third town hall, and we are so excited to have you here. Again, my name is Doreen Benavides. I work for the Division of Equity and Excellence here with Fort Worth ISD, and I'm your moderator for this third town hall. We are really excited to hear from our parents, our teachers, our students. We have taken some questions through Slido, and we'll also be taking some live questions tonight as well. Please know that our district leaders are here to try to answer your questions as best as possible. So we will start with those in just a second. Before we do, I just want to say thank you to Dr. Scribner for being here this evening, our school board president, Mr. Jacinto Ramos, and we have 3 other board members joining us tonight as well. We have Representative Daphne Brookins from District 4, Representative Ann Dar from District 6, and Representative Ashley Foss will be joining us here in a second from District 9. Just so you are aware, and or if anybody is wanting to know, you can listen to this conversation on YouTube and or Facebook Live. And we also have sign interpreters tonight, and we will have this conversation in Spanish. So for those of you who are needing the conversation in Spanish, there is a button if you move your screen a little bit. If you're on the webinar only, this cannot be done through Facebook Live or through YouTube. If you're on the webinar, you can click on the little world button that says interpretation to listen to it in Spanish. Hoy pueden escuchar esta conversación por YouTube y Facebook Live. También tenemos la interpretación para lenguaje de ciencias y para gente que quiere escuchar en español. Quiero introducir Mrs. Quiroz, que va a interpretar por nosotros, y Kelly Schmuck and Monique Eyre. Monique Eyre will be interpreting sign language for us, and also Miss Kelly Schmuck. Thank you so much for being here this evening with us. Our panel this evening will talk about plans for the new school year. And there will be different topics of conversation that we will hold. As part of this conversation, we do want to commit to some agreement. But before we do that, we want to make sure that we have our panelists introduce themselves and just give us a little bit of background and introduction of who they are and how they're representing our district this evening. So we'll start with Dr. Scribner.
Thank you very much, Doreen, and thank you to our trustees who are participating here as well. This is our 4th town hall.
Oh, you're right.
We understand that it is important for us as leaders to listen, to learn, and to lead. In Fort Worth ISD, serving 209 square miles, we have a diverse student population, a diverse community with different needs, and we want to make sure that we are operating and making decisions in the best interest of all students. Our goal, as I've shared in the previous town halls, is we want to get students back in school, but we want to get students back in school safely. As soon as possible, we want to open schools, but we want to open them in circumstances where they can continue to stay open. We know that there are other communities around the country that we've seen opening in person when the community conditions perhaps we're not supportive of that decision, and in fact, as a result of spreads, schools had to close. Here in Fort Worth, we really want to work as a community to get the virus under control so we can open as soon as possible and remain open. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Scribner. Trustee Ramos. President Ramos.
Well, good to see everyone again tonight. Just a continuation from us as a board as to where we're at. We've been doing a lot of governance work, and part of our governance journey is to be able to hold forums where we listen to our community. And so I'm going to be on mute because you probably hear my dogs. We've got family, so it'll be a little noisy for us tonight.
Thank you. Trustee Brookins.
Good evening. I'm Daphne Brookins. I'm Fort Worth ISD trustee representing District 4. I'm excited to be here on my first town hall this evening, and I'm anticipating some great questions, and here to learn. Thank you.
Thank you. Trustee Dar.
Good evening. My name is Ann Dar. I represent District 6. To give you an idea of where District 6 is, the two high schools in my district are Southwest High School and South Hills High School, and the district moves kind of north up past I-20 as well. I am an educator. I am a parent. I am an active community member. I am proud to serve the students and the families of Fort Worth ISD. And I too look forward to questions and concerns, because I've always said that I would much rather serve a community that is passionate. And I think we can agree that there is a lot of passion in Fort Worth ISD right now. And I would much rather serve a community that is passionate about education and about the children in our community, because they are our greatest asset, than serve a community that's just kind of meh. So thank you for being the community that is passionate.
Thank you, Ms. Dar. And Trustee Paz.
Yes, thank you. I'm Ashley Paz. I represent District 9, which spans from Riverside, West Meadowbrook, downtown, and through the near south side into Worth Heights, which is one of the largest districts in Fort Worth ISD. I have the most schools in my district, and also the largest number of high-performing schools in Fort Worth ISD. But we don't look district by district. I serve all of Fort Worth ISD, and I'm glad to be here tonight. This is my first virtual town hall meeting with Fort Worth ISD, and I'm excited to hear the opinions of everyone across the district, and use those opinions and that feedback to inform our decisions moving forward.
Thank you so much, Ms. Paz. So we're going to go ahead and get started. Please know that tonight we are asking for you to share your questions, comments, and suggestions. And remember, as part of this conversation, we want to focus as much as possible using our racial equity lens. So as part of our conversation, we commit to 4 agreements and 2 conditions. The first one being staying engaged. We will experience some discomfort in the conversation. We want you to speak your truth, and we are here to listen. So we will expect and accept some non-closure in tonight's conversation, but we do expect this conversation to be ongoing. We will also follow 2 conditions during this conversation. The first one is focus on personal, local, and immediate. And the second one is isolating race. When we have these conversations in the district, we do this to have equity for all. So please note that we will begin at the very end to start to wrap up around 6:40 or so, as we want our panelists to also have some final words and thoughts as we close this conversation. So part of this process tonight will be to start with some questions from Slido first. And I will take the questions from Slido, and then I will go live and ask, we'll call one person at a time, and we'll do it in order that you have submitted the questions. So our panelists, are you ready to get started? All right, here we go. So I'm going to ask with Slido, just so that if in case you're not aware, we took the highest ranking question, and then we'll just go down in order that the questions were submitted to our district. So our first question for our panel is, what markers are you watching, and what numbers need to be met in order for us to return to in-person learning?
Well, thank you, Doreen, and trustees. I'll jump in on that one. There are multiple metrics that we are monitoring that are produced at the state level, but also here at the county health department. And one of the most informative metrics that we are looking at, we believe, is the 7-day rolling average of positive cases. Just as an aside, I serve on the Council of Great City Schools, a national organization that Dallas ISD and Arlington ISD and Fort Worth and cities across the country, LA, Chicago, New York, Miami, all the big cities in Houston as well. And Houston's former superintendent, Dr. Carranza, is now superintendent of New York City, the largest district in America with over 1 million students. They are actually going to be able to open in person because their 7-day rolling average for positive cases is at 1%. The governor of that state indicated anything below 5% and schools could open. They're at 1%. Here in Texas, unfortunately, our 7-day rolling average was 17% on the last Friday. Today, it's hovering around 20%. Here in Tarrant County, we are somewhere between 11 and 12%. So it is our hope that all of us as a community can really join together and pull together in this circumstance and wear face coverings and engage in social distancing, 6 feet apart, wash hands on a regular basis, so we can really get the coronavirus numbers down significantly and have that be sustained. Again, we want to make sure that 12, 11% gets all the way down to an acceptable percentage, and we'll be working very, very closely with county health to determine what that would be. But we want it to get to an acceptable level and then remain there so that we don't reopen schools and then see an outbreak and have to close them again. We want to open schools as quickly as possible, as safely as possible, in a manner so that they can remain open.
Thank you, Dr. Scribner. And I want to add just a little bit. I know that there's lots of questions that were also asked from the chat and Slido about answering some of the questions for our staff. And we will be having a live town hall for our district staff on August 19th. That will take place at 1 p.m. So please know, for our staff members returning, we will be answering questions. We will have district personnel who can ask more specific questions around what the reopening of school will look like for you virtually. So please know, mark that on your calendars, August 19th at 1 p.m. We will be having a live town hall for all staff personnel. We're going to go on to the next question on Slido. So the next question is, why are the trustees not listening to the 52% vote for in-person learning?
Doreen and trustees, if I may, I'd like to just to start that off and indicate that in my professional judgment, the trustees, in fact, are listening to the community. When we began this the survey on July the 1st, we had our first 10 or 20,000 students enrolled, and that continued on till about July 20th, where we had 30 or 40,000 enrolled. Those numbers have gone up significantly since then. We were at about 52% wanted in person, 48% wanted virtual, as is stated by in this question. After July the 20th, when we saw the spike in coronavirus cases, those numbers really shifted, and those individuals who enrolled after July 20th, it was about 30% of those responding wanted in person and 70% wanted virtual. So we need to monitor that as we move forward. Since then, as you know, the county health made a decree closing schools to in person until September 28th. And we all know what happened then with the Attorney General's letter of guidance. Our board voted to postpone the first day of school until September the 8th, continuing with 4 weeks of virtual learning. We certainly want to get back as quickly as possible. And again, if conditions were to change, it would be my recommendation that we do reintroduce the concept of a hybrid model where those 52%, whatever that percentage would be, because we also know that survey data is a snapshot of a point in time. Whatever that percentage maybe it would be higher, maybe it would be lower, but they would be allowed to attend in person, those students. and those students who wish to continue virtually would have that option as well. We want to provide choice. We want to do education in the most safe way possible, open schools as quickly as possible, and keep them open. So in my view, our trustees are in fact listening. When the substantial community spread, which is the official term that's happening here in Tarrant County at 11 or 12% positivity rate, when that comes down and gets into the single digits and into an acceptable level as per Department of Health, then certainly it'll be my recommendation that we reconsider the board's position and consider a hybrid model.
Thank you, Dr. Scribner. Go ahead, Ms. Dar.
Thank you. I appreciate that data. I am very data driven, and I appreciate the fact that you had that data to share with us tonight, Dr. Scribner. I also would like to address this question in that I feel like I am listening. I promise you I am. I am reading your emails. I am following your comments on Facebook. I am trying very hard to pay attention to the community. And I recognize that after the decision made on July 30th, that some people were very angry about that. But I also know, because of comments that have been made to me, that there were many people that were very relieved with the decision that we made. And to reiterate Dr. Scribner's comment is that we want to make sure that in-person learning happens when it can be sustained. That we're not opening up schools for in-person learning only to have to shut them 2 days later, 2 weeks later, because the community spread is such that we have not managed to get it contained. The other thing to keep in mind is that when decisions like this are being made, there are multiple pieces of information that we have to take into consideration. And the response, the 52%, which is barely over half, the 52% is certainly something that we need to factor into that. But we also have to factor into it, consider the medical data. Just 2 days before we made the decision to delay school and begin school with 4 weeks of virtual learning, Cook Children's Hospital in our backyard, Cook Children's Hospital specifically stated, we feel that this, being opening schools, can only be achieved when it is safe for people to gather and COVID transmission rates in our community have lowered. It's really hard to ignore that kind of a comment from a children's hospital that is in our very community, which I place more weight on that than on a hospital in Washington, D.C. or somewhere else that is speaking or trying to help our entire community make decisions. So that 52% is certainly significant, but it is one piece of data that is a part of the process to making very important decisions. And there are multiple pieces of data that have to factor into that decision. And I appreciate the fact that that people are continuing to make their voice heard. And I think that you should make your voice heard. But please do know that the board is listening.
Thank you, Ms. Dar, for that. We really appreciate those comments. Anybody else before I go on to the next question? Okay. I'm going to do one more question from Slido, and then I'm going to go to some live questions, and I already have those names ready to call on our participants. So the next question is, will Cinto Ramos be held accountable for his incredibly racist remarks?
I'll take that one, if it's okay with my colleagues and with Mr. Ramos. So in answering this question, I'm going to go back to our racial equity lens that Ms. Benavides, Dr. Benavides mentioned at the beginning of our meeting. Staying engaged, experiencing discomfort. There's a lot of discomfort around this question. Speaking my truth and isolating race. And then also she mentioned two of our conditions that are keeping it local and personal, and expecting and accepting non-closure. There's one more condition that I would like to acknowledge, even though it wasn't mentioned, and that is acknowledging the presence of white. When I hear the question of will one of my colleagues be held accountable for incredibly racist remarks, when be held accountable, I hear that the requester is looking for some kind of punishment to occur because of an alleged offense. And in this case, that alleged offense is racist remarks. And this came to my attention this afternoon. When it came to my attention, I sat down and I started writing a list of all of Cinto's accomplishments and all of the national boards that he chairs and the leadership that he has shown across our country nationally, not just as a school board leader, but as a racial equity leader. And so ultimately, I decided I'm not going to sit here and list out all of those accomplishments, because the real talk is that people of color are always having to qualify themselves to white folks to be taken seriously. And so by me sitting here and doing that, I am only perpetuating that standard. The point is that Mr. Ramos holds a high level of positional power. And even with all of the power that he holds as our board president, our longest serving board president since we have had a self-appointed board president among our board members. But even with all of the power that he has, that as a brown man and as a son of immigrants, he still lacks the societal power and the positional power to perpetuate racism. And that's just the fact of the matter. Racism is not an individual force. Racism is systemic. I have gone back and reviewed our president's comment. The remarks that he made, there was nothing where he disparaged anyone based on race, or he didn't disparage anyone at all. What he did was he addressed the disparities that exist for Black and brown communities. And I would hate to believe that the people who I am seeing post on Facebook and social media, who happen, a lot of these folks are good friends of mine. They tend to, that they are allowing the advocacy for Black and brown communities to threaten the balance of power and society that have been established by the condition of whiteness that we talked about with our condition. When that happens, people become scared. And when a person of color happens to be the one who is challenging those social norms, they have a disproportionate reaction from white folks than as if I were to challenge those norms. And this is exactly what we are trying to address within Fort Worth ISD. I am not going to speak for any other board member, but as the Fort Worth ISD, the district does not have the ability to hold any one board member accountable. We as board members do not have the authority to hold a board member accountable. We can censure a board member when there's something that has been when they don't agree with their actions or they've violated policy. I've been censured myself. And it was, something that I wear as somewhat of a badge of honor, because I was censured for standing up against a racist system. In this situation, any type of accountability, so to speak, is going to come from the voters. It's going to come from the taxpayers. And the people who I see that are demanding accountability are not people who live in President Ramos's district. In fact, the people who live in President Ramos's district, I have seen thanking him, and the people in my district, which I serve a district that is predominantly Latino and has a large number of Black residents as well. And what I'm hearing from the folks who live in my district is that they are glad to hear board members standing up for communities of color and acknowledging the disparities that they face in our healthcare system. And I hope that we can continue this conversation and acknowledge when we do have instances of that become uncomfortable. And it is uncomfortable for me to say this. As I said, I'm talking to a lot of my friends here. But I hope that we can work through this discomfort, because there is a much larger conversation that needs to happen here that goes beyond COVID. And the truth about COVID is that Black and brown kids are dying at a disproportionate rate. They are catching this disease at a disproportionate rate. And now that some schools have opened across the district or across the country, we are now able to track those numbers and see exactly how it happens. And acknowledging that the majority of our essential workers, they're not all doctors and people who are working high paying jobs. They are mostly low wage workers, which are also disproportionately from the Black and brown community. And at the point where we have these types of issues that boil over, I think that President Ramos has become kind of a lightning rod for it, because he made some very uncomfortable statements. He made some very honest statements, but what he said was not wrong. And, I said I'm not going to speak for my colleagues, but I do know that we as a board have taken very bold action when it comes to race and racism in the form of resolutions, in the form of letters that we've sent to Congress, and in the form of a very robust racial equity policy. And so I tend to go on and on, so I'm going to leave it at that. But I wanted to acknowledge the undercurrent that has driven to this question. And if there is an expectation that our board censure him for these comments, which is the only repercussion that we would have, I as one member will not.
Thank you, Ms. Paz. And just, speaking as a Latina and my personal local and immediate, thank you, Trustee Ramos, for speaking your truth, because the numbers are there and they're telling a story, and they are disproportionate. Yes, the numbers might be higher amongst the white race, but when you look at the numbers from our Black and brown community, they're very significantly disproportionate. So I appreciate that, Trustee Ramos. We're going to go ahead and take the first live question at this time. So if you will call Kent Cole, he has a question about elementary virtual instruction. Kent? All right, Kent. Are you there, sir? There you go.
Yes, there we go. Thank you. I'm Ken Cool. My daughter's a second grader in Fort Worth ISD. Thanks, trustees and Superintendent Scribner, for providing this forum for us parents, and for your hard work during these unprecedented times, and for keeping our students, families, and our teachers safe right now. I really do appreciate it. I know how hard this must be. A couple of quick questions about returning this fall. First, it's my hope, and my question is, will elementary students have virtual lessons from all the teachers at their school in their grade level, so that they're familiar with their in-person teacher when they do go back to in-person? So, if there's 4 second grade teachers, if they're exposed to all of them, then when they go to in-person, they'll know the classroom they're sitting in, they'll know that teacher when that time comes. And my second question is about the focus on social emotional health, and if virtual classes will meet in class groups and have those meetings be focused on social emotional health. Again, thank you, trustees and superintendent.
Thank you, Mr. Cole.
And thank you very much, Mr. Cole, for that question. Yes, as we have shared with the media and internally, as well as our stakeholder partners, it's important to know that the fall version of online for the first 4 weeks will certainly be extremely different than what took place in the spring. You'll remember, and we all know that in the spring we all pivoted within a week or two and made a system work that none of us expected. We've had the spring and summer now to prepare, and what we expect is 4 hours of instruction for students from kindergarten through the 12th grade from their teacher. So in this case, it sounded like you had a second grader, a younger elementary student your child would be engaging with the teacher every day for 4 hours. We'd be providing our resources to that student, to that classroom. Teachers also would have the opportunity, in addition to the 4 hours of large group instruction or group instruction, to be able to do smaller group instruction and have set aside, whether it be in office hours or in an individual tutoring scenario or a small group instruction. For some of our students, we have also heard from parents and teachers that they'd like the option to provide paper and pencil work in addition to the online work, consumable textbooks, and we are providing that opportunity for you as well. So from our perspective, it'll look very different. We talked a little bit also about the challenge between the remediation and acceleration. We want our students, we want to assess their readiness at the beginning of the school year. Areas where students need additional support, to focus there with our small groups. You made an interesting point with regard to the social and emotional also. It's going to be incumbent upon our teachers to really work in those first few days on connection. We all know that students are less interested in content and more interested in connection, and they will not engage in content until there is a connection with a teacher. Last year, obviously, teachers and students had an opportunity to build an in-person relationship until March and then finish the school year online. We will not have that luxury this year, at least in the first 4 weeks. So we really want to make sure that the teachers understand the importance of building relationships and also the social and emotional aspect, and perhaps the small groups and the office hours could be an important opportunity there. And it was funny, online, I saw a college student indicate she was a first in her generation, first in her family to attend college. She indicated she didn't know what office hours meant. She thought office hours were for simply the professors to do their work. In fact, office hours, we want our students and our teachers engaging in support. We have a new literacy framework for our younger students that will support acceleration. We want to spend more time this year in that literacy framework interacting with students, as opposed to the teacher simply standing at the front of the class or being on the Zoom screen and teaching. Want oral reading fluency, comprehension, writing, a two-way flow of information. So we expect, thank you for the question, the opportunity to talk about how we will integrate social and emotional into the content. This is going to be extremely improved product. We're calling it our online 2.0 as compared to last spring. Thank you for the question.
Thank you. So Dr. Scribner, our next one is going to be Candace. Candace wants to know, should we get tested even though negative to reduce positive percentage? I'm assuming he tested for COVID. We'll have Candace.
So the question was
should he get tested even though negative to reduce positive percentage? She's on the call.
It sounds like kind of an arithmetic question about if more people who know they're not positive with coronavirus go and get tested, would that help decrease the percentage of positive cases? Again, I'm not a public health expert, but I do know that we certainly don't want to game the system. We want to make sure we're getting accurate data. The goal here is to have a healthy community so that we don't open up schools in a substantial community spread scenario and have students get infected, have teachers get infected, and have this entire scenario spin out of control. We really have, I would argue, a few weeks, if not a month or so, to get this under control before the flu season hits. We saw our Governor Abbott remind us the importance of getting this under control before flu season. So I would not, again, I don't want to give any public health advice, but the question about individuals who believe that they're positive going to get tested, I would leave that up to those individuals to make that decision.
Thank you. The next question is from Minerva. Minerva. The question she has is, how often will staff and children be tested?
We talked about that at one of the community stakeholder groups. Every Monday, I participate on a call with the hospitals, with the healthcare providers, with the homeless shelter leaders, with the United Way nonprofit, early childhood, and many other groups, volunteers. And the conversation did emerge about, are you going to test all of your 80,000 students and all of your teachers? And the response that we received from public health professionals is that would not be an advisable tactic, because what we do not want to do is flood the testing sites such that that would delay the results. We really want to make sure we are testing those individuals. To the earlier question, that suspect that they have coronavirus. We do have rapid COVID testing sites. In fact, at Scarborough Hanley Field, that is now open, at the TCC Northwest campus, as well as I think we just wrapped up our site at Elder Middle School. But yes, those are all considerations, and I appreciate the question.
Okay. And I just want to do a quick announcement. Para la gente que está en la conversación y que necesita la información en español, si tenemos un entrevistista, por favor, tenemos un botón que tienen que tocar, se mira como un mundo, para que puedan oír la información en español. So for those of you who are needing interpretation in Spanish, please know that we do have the interpretation button, and you can click on it and it'll take you to Spanish. Also, we are live on Facebook and we are also live on YouTube. So please know that you can always go back if you're just now joining in the conversation and watch the video from the very beginning. Dr. Christian, how do students how will teachers get books to their students, if at all? Is that going to be an option?
Yes, in fact, in the same way that we have been able to serve now over 1 million meals, we were 950,000 meals at last count. So my estimation is that we are right around, if not over, 1 million meals. The same thing will take place with distributing books and other instructional material. We want to have a drive-through opportunity. In fact, just the other day, I prepared boxes and backpacks at TCC South for our community school roundup and providing school supplies to students. We will have a campus schedule. We saw one of our sister districts have some delayed lines and had some challenges there. We want to learn from that, and we will have scheduled times for parents to come through in a drive-through or walk-up scenario where social distancing and all of the safety protocols will be taken. But we will be communicating that out to our parents so that they know when they can come and get school supplies.
Thank you for that. It looks like Lindsay was able to join us. Lindsay, I know you had a question. You had a question about year to date. Lindsay, are you there?
I am here. Can you hear me?
Ma'am.
Thank everyone. Gosh, we've learned so much already, that, this is Cook's fault and that it's also white people's fault. But moving on from that, we're wondering about the year-to-date enrollment numbers and where we are year-to-date on today, August, compared to year-to-date last year. And if those enrollment numbers are down as families are fleeing the district, how will the district make your budget revenue from this year? Will you have to lay off staff?
Thank you for that question. The assertion that we're below our enrollment from last year just doesn't correspond with our data. In fact, our data reflects that we have a higher percentage enrolled on this date as opposed to last year. But that also could be a function of the fact that last year was our first year doing online enrollment. It is true that that student enrollment dictates staffing, and 85% of schools' budgets are tied to staffing. So we really want to make sure that that all students are enrolled, and not because of any economic or financial reasons. Those numbers and those percentages, those are students, and we want our students to be engaged in school. We want to get our community health under control so that we can open schools in person, and we want our students to attend the first 4 weeks virtually, unless the 7-day rolling average decreases and stabilizes. But certainly soon thereafter, get our students.
Right, so Kent, then you will release those numbers to us, please, because we've been trying to get those from your office all day, and they won't release that enrollment data.
Okay, I believe today we're at 73% of the 83,000 students, but certainly we can provide that as well. Thank you.
Oh, you will provide that. Thank you, Kent. I'll let your office know.
Thank you.
We're going to go ahead and move over to some Slido questions. So we'll pull up the Slido questions so we can post those next. Thank you so much, Dr. Scribner, for that information. We're going to go ahead and move on to the questions that are being asked online. So are you asking all non-teaching positions to work from campus? I'm asking Fort Worth ISD to reconsider this. We cannot rank life, health, and wellness by job position.
Well, we totally agree that the life and health and wellness certainly is not ranked by job position. In fact, we're making all decisions with the health and safety of our students and our staff as the most important factor, as the primary decision reason for making the decision. We have delayed the virtual start of the school year, and that being said, we do have to remember that our core function as a school district is teaching and learning. We want, again, students in school, in class, learning. We are in the business of educating young people. We're in a different position today than we were last spring. Last spring, we had a stay-at-home order, so all employees were required to stay at home. That no longer is the case. We are hopefully inching forward toward getting this pandemic under control so that we can have students in school. So those staff members, me included, who are here to support students and support families, we will be present during each learning day. We're asking our instructional support staff to return to work so we can support those families, and our newest teachers, our 0-year teachers, and our first-year teachers who never really completed their first year in a school building last spring. We will have those teachers will be in person. We want to make sure all other teachers are receiving the guidance and support that they need. And if they need guidance with questions of quality or decorum or professionalism, they too will be invited to instruct in our school building so they can receive the necessary support. So while health and safety guide us, we are ensuring our protocols will be taken. Each campus does have those protocols. We'll be continuing to communicate that out with appropriate signage, and principals are clearly aware about the importance of wearing face coverings, social distancing, routinely washing your hands and sanitizing our workspaces. Our goal, again, is to get students back in schools as quickly and as safely as possible. And everyone's help is paramount, that we all pull together to get this done.
Thank you. Are there any other comments on that? Just want to make sure. Go ahead, Ms. Paz.
Yeah, I just have a quick comment on this one because this is actually something that the board did, we did have a pretty serious conversation with staff about it. And ultimately, the serving children is our top priority, and making sure that they're getting back on campus is our top priority. I think you all heard my kids come in earlier, and I want them to be back on campus as soon as possible. But with us having, having there, we're not having students. Not all teachers are going to be there. You are actually reducing the number of people who are on your campus, and the likelihood of, you have a less likely opportunity for exposure. And especially if you haven't been able to view or go online and do the COVID training that Fort Worth ISD provides, I strongly encourage you to do that, because they give a lot of really good strategies about keeping yourself safe, keeping your workspace safe, and eliminating your own risk and the risk for those around.
Thank you, Ms. Paz. All right, I'm going to go ahead and go on to the next question. For those of you who are just jumping on, just a reminder, we will be having a teacher town hall on August 19th at 1 p.m. So if you have more questions for our district personnel, we will be having an intra-district town hall for our teachers so that we can answer questions about what return to school through virtual learning will look like, and any other questions that you might have. So I just want to make sure I made that announcement for you. So the next question that we have from Slido, why do you find it okay to support a childcare program for children in the district, but do not support the choice of returning to school in person and virtual?
So I think this question is getting at the earlier conversation about teachers being able to bring their children to school. That no longer is the position that we support. There was a conversation early on, and all of this is so fluid. It changes daily. Really, in some cases, it changes hourly as we monitor these numbers. You're absolutely right. But in this case, it will be our new teachers, our first-year teachers, who will be providing their 4 hours of instruction from the school building. We will have some students on campus, though. As you know, the special education situation allows us to identify those students whose IEPs are, those students who it is most difficult to serve in a virtual scenario, that we allow them to schedule time with appropriate social distancing, with appropriate safety protocols. So we will have some of our students who have severe challenges. We want to make sure that they're getting the services and support that they need. And again, with an ultimate goal of getting the virus under control in the community so that all students can benefit from in-person.
Thank you. Any other responses? Okay, I'm going to go to one more question on Slido, and then I've got a couple of live questions that we're going to be taking. So the next question is, many staff are already back on campus and people are not following safety guidelines for face masks and social distancing. How can we feel safe this way?
Well, that's just not acceptable. I mean, we have to stay strong, work together when it comes to safety protocols. We met with our building principals last week, both virtually and in person in small groups with appropriate social distancing. We worked on campus virtual instructional plans, but also our expectations for healthy environment. This is a delicate one because, as we see in some retail stores, some of the reactions that are very unpleasant, we have to respectfully hold each other accountable. As I said, wearing wearing face covering, social distancing, washing hands, keeping our environments clean and sanitized. We have our custodial staff, and actually we'll be adding additional staff members who will ensure our school environments remain sanitized. School site leaders are ensuring that they have been given the directive to ensure safe environments. So when we see those circumstances, if you could please share that information with the building leader so that it can be addressed appropriately. As we come back to the work environment, we have to realize that the school environment is not the same one that we left. And I'm asking each of you and all of us to do our part. I'll hold my team accountable for having healthy and safe schools in which you may work. And again, if there are there are specific issues or specific sites where that is a challenge, please report that. Communication really is going to be key as we navigate these uncharted waters together.
Dr. Benavides, may I add to that? Thank you, Dr. Scribner. I also want to make sure that the public is aware that the board established a constraint, a goal that specifically states that 100% of Fort Worth ISD employees will be trained on COVID safety measures by the first day of school, not by November 1st, not by January 1st, by the first day of school, that 100% of the Fort Worth ISD staff will be trained on those COVID safety protocols. We take personal health and safety very seriously, and that is one way that we can support that by making a goal for the staff to make sure that that happens.
Thank you.
And also that we as board members have agreed to do the same training that we are expecting staff to do. So we're putting ourselves through the same thing, and I promise it's painless.
Thank you. I've done the trainings myself, and you're right, they are painless. All right, so we're going to go on to a live question. I believe we have Melanie Grubbs about faculty on learning today. Go ahead, Ms. Grubbs.
I'm here. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay, so I work at Marine Creek Collegiate High School, and we just found out today that we are going back to work on Monday. And my question is why the early college high schools for this district, we have been the top performers in the district for the past 5 years. We have set the standard, and it's not because we have the best and the brightest students. It's because we work our tails off. It's because we know that student success is not tied to a contract. But to find out 5 days before we have to begin our contract and make all of those preparations and changes for childcare and things like that, that makes us feel lower than low, like we are disrespected, like nobody values what we bring to the district. And so I'm wondering why, when it was known 2 weeks ago that, the rest of the district was going September 8th, why has it taken this long?
Thank you, Ms. Grubbs, for your question. We're going to try to answer that for you.
No, thank you very much. And again, to my earlier point about the importance of communication. So our early college high school is on the calendar that TCC set, the Tarrant County College set. So those students are on a collegiate schedule. They'll be following the collegiate guidelines. In fact, where Fort Worth ISD is hoping to come back on October the 5th, hopefully sooner, the TCC early college high school students will be following the guidelines set by Tarrant County College. So they'll be virtual all semester. Our trainings for online instruction are posted, and teachers are able to work at their own schedule. We certainly I'll follow up with my staff and find out, in fact, if that decision, if that information was in fact known 2 weeks ago. If it was not, we will certainly pass that along as well. But yeah, the early college high schools really are in a different category. You're absolutely right. Those students are high achieving, those teachers are high achieving, those principals are high achieving. And because they're on a collegiate campus, they'll follow the collegiate schedule and in fact be virtual the entire first semester in accordance with TCC.
Thank you, Dr. Scribner. We do have one more live question. Eugenia, she has a question about her students in kinder. Eugenia, you're available. You can go ahead and go live. Are you there? Okay, I'm going to go ahead and take another live. since we can't. So is Mandy there? Is Mandy available?
Doreen, if I could just, I think Eugenia or Eugenia is now not muted.
Oh, okay. Go ahead. Thank you.
Are the pre-K and the K going to be able to do virtual schooling on the Chromebook, the school issued Chromebook?
Yes, in fact, the program that they'll be using is Seesaw. We want to provide a variety for our youngest learners. There will be direct instruction from a teacher. They will be using Chromebooks, but we also want to organize it so that there are small group opportunities with the teacher and the Chromebook. We also want to reduce screen time, though, for our youngest learners, and provide activities and paper and pencil and consumables. We have consumable textbooks that we'll be providing them as well.
Okay, and now we're going to take Mandy. Mandy, are you there? I think we're just waiting for the unmute. Mandy? Dr. Scribner, Mandy, since she's having difficulty with the muting, will Fort Worth ISD be able to provide technology by September 8th? That's the question that she has.
Yes, in fact, not only did we provide 24,000 devices last spring, the board approved an additional 10,000 hotspots. We are in the process of when students enroll, 73% of enrolled, there's a survey question that indicates whether or not they have needs for technology, and we are working with our principals to identify those specific families. Again, our principals know their communities better than we do. We have 143 sites and 143 school communities, and we want our principals and staff and family outreach staff to help with a schedule to deploy needed devices or hotspots or any other learning supply that's necessary to deploy those from the campus level.
Thank you, Dr. Scribner.
And interestingly enough, just as an aside, this year will be, if there is a silver lining, rather, if there is a silver lining to this year, it's that our principals have been on contract for several weeks now, and the runway in order to prepare for the first day of school is significant. And I met with the principals last week and indicated to them that last spring, all eyes were on the teacher. This summer, all eyes have been on the board and the superintendent. I can promise you that. And as we move into the fall, all eyes are going to be on the principals to ensure that there is the 4 hours of engagement and instruction every day from a teacher to the group of students, that in fact there is quality instruction. This principal is going to be dropping in on the Zoom lessons and ensuring that in fact quality instruction is taking place in the same way that they would in a classroom visit.
Thank you. So the next one that we're going to have is Mindia. And Mindia, as you come on, we ask that you ask one question because we're trying to get as many live participants as possible. So Mindia, if you'll ask your question. Mindia? So I know the question is about the platform in the district, I'm assuming for virtual learning, Dr. Scribner. She's unmuting. It's what platform is district using to deliver instruction for high school students?
We will be using a Google platform that is familiar to teachers, familiar to students. We'll be studying how it's rolled out and monitoring, adjusting if we need to make a change. Our instructional team has been really all over this summer, so we'll be able to respond quickly.
Can I add to that?
Yes, go ahead.
I met with a principal last week who is the principal of a very high-performing school, and she was extremely excited about the virtual learning information that she's been receiving from the district at the district level, because I'm paraphrasing her words, is that it is It provides a framework and guidelines, but it also allows for a significant amount of teacher autonomy. And I think that's critical because the teachers are the ones that know their students and know how to, they will be getting to know their students. We've already discussed the social emotional learning, and they're the ones that can put the process in place to make sure that those kids are understanding the information and that we're mastering the TEKS that they need to be mastering. So I appreciate that the district has put together a virtual learning platform, or not really a platform because that's really Google, but a virtual learning model so that there are standards, there are guidelines, but the school and the teachers still have a significant amount of autonomy, and that's how good education happens, when those two work together.
Thank you, Ms. Dar. Any other comments before we go into Slido? Okay. So we're going to do a few questions from Slido and then come back to live. And I would just like to remind our participants, if you could just ask your one question so we can try to get as many live questions as possible tonight. And also a quick reminder that we will be having a teacher town hall to ask more specific questions from our Fort Worth ISD district leaders about virtual learning and returning to school, because I know there's a lot of questions still out there. All right, so our first question is, we have already a positive case on our campus. How many more of us have to get infected before the district understands we're being exposed unnecessarily?
Well, we all know that coronavirus is around us, and we need to continue to live, and we're not on a stay-at-home basis. We're out and about, but we need to be smart about wearing face coverings, about social distancing, about washing our hands on a regular basis. We do have a safety protocol in place when a positive case is reported. So we have teams ready to respond of our nurses and other support staff with deep cleaning of facilities to support anyone who is in close contact with an individual. We'll have to be accountable for safe environments, but also stay consistent with our safety protocols and tracing and understanding where students are sitting in the classroom, assigned seating, adult scheduling as well. We're going to see this. There will be stages of addressing safety protocols when there is a positive case of coronavirus. The TEA provides us guidelines about what to do in a classroom. Perhaps we just close the classroom as a result of those guidelines and not the entire school. Perhaps it's a grade level. If it does end up being a school, there are different timelines. There's a 5-day timeline. And again, these are all considerations once we minimize the substantial community spread in our community and are able to open up schools and keep them open.
Sorry, I'm not sure what happened to the Slido. We're going to pull that back up. Just a quick reminder for those of you who are joining us, we do have this on Facebook Live. We will also have it on YouTube for those of you who may have missed the beginning part of the conversation. We also have this in Spanish. Si necesitan la información en español, tenemos el botón que se mira como un mundo para que puedan oír la información en español. All right, here's our Slido. So our next question is about student-teacher restrooms. So the lack of touchless water faucets and soap dispensers, hot water, paper towels, not air blowers. Please, they're asking if we could please relocate funds and upgrade before in person. So I'm not sure if you're able to answer that.
Yeah, I mean, other than to say, we do have challenges. 60% of our schools were built before 1960. Now, thankfully, our schools are not the same age as those in other Boston or Chicago or some other cities with much older buildings. But we do have older buildings, and we appreciate these comments. And certainly, we're looking at our health and safety adjustments. One thing that has taken place, the board approved in the bond expenditures the investment in our high schools. So those high school restrooms are being completed, and many of them are. middle school restrooms this summer have been completed. So when we open up school, hopefully sometime as quickly as possible, certainly we will have those middle school and high school bathroom improvements completed. As we move forward, again, this is going to be a scenario where we would need to reallocate dollars and spend them as efficiently and effectively as possible. Responding to the world with COVID-19 is expensive. We've spent tens of millions of dollars, as I said, on technology, but also on PPE and other cleaning and safety resources.
Thank you, Dr. Scribner. All right, just making sure there isn't anybody else who's going to respond to that. I'm going to go to the next question on Slido. Why isn't Fort Worth ISD adding minutes to our day instead of taking up half of June? Lots of other districts have done this.
We investigated multiple options as we were looking at this decision to address the delayed school start date. Adding additional minutes certainly was a consideration. Reallocating scheduled non-instructional days also. As we, through our effort to look at all options, in the short term, the only viable solution that we had at this time was to extend the school year. We will continue to monitor, and should we take a different tack, then we certainly would be, I would be responsible for bringing a recommendation to the board to address this. I would also like to say that we have a significant amount of catch-up work to do for all of our students, particularly those younger learners. So moving forward, we as a community and many urban communities, I think, are also looking at the school calendar, and do we want to have some different options. I know we did a survey this summer, and surveys are a snapshot of a point in time, and right now our community voted to remain on a traditional calendar. I would suggest that we continue that conversation and look at the pros and cons, and if the community were supportive and the board were supportive of an alternative calendar, that we consider that and have a robust conversation around.
Thank you. I'm going to take 2 more questions from Slido, and then we'll go to a few more live, and then we'll begin to start wrapping up our conversation this evening. So some parents won't be able to oversee online learning. How will schools work with childcare facilities on class schedules, questions, and technology issues? Is there a plan for that?
So the board and our leadership team have had good conversations around this, and we landed on a hybrid model, if you will, of virtual instruction. We will have both synchronous and asynchronous instruction. So synchronous instruction is scheduled instruction for 4 hours during the day, where teacher and student will know that instruction will start at this time, probably break for lunch, and end at 4 hours later, after 4 instructional hours. Those instructional lessons will be recorded, and a student who needs to interact with a parent or would benefit from an adult helping in an asynchronous model would be able to engage in those lessons at a time that fit their schedule when it works for them. So, for example, some students may go from 9 in the morning until 2 in the afternoon with an hour for lunch. Some students may do those 4 hours either before that period of time or after that period of time in a recorded asynchronous instructional model. Those students, even if they were learning at a different time, they would also be able to benefit from teacher office hours, from the small group times that teachers will be working with students. And additionally, our team is also working with parent partnership and parent resources in order to get ready for virtual learning. Many of you know that we have created the position, the executive directorship of parent partnership, and our former principal at Manuel Jara, Marta Plata, is our executive director of parent partnership, and she will be spearheading those parent outreach efforts in order to help our parents, those who need to become more adept at virtual instruction, that they get those learnings as soon as possible.
Thank you. Dr. Scribner, the next question that's on here is about PPE, and I know you answered a lot of the questions around PPE. I think this is more of a clarification one. They're wanting to know, right now, the voters are saying that it's been inconsistent, and that's not what was said in terms of providing PPE. What is the plan for when the rest of the staff returns? When will we be able to make sure that everyone has PPE?
Well, the first thing I would say is that the board has authorized me to invest and spend money on significant PPE. So our warehouses have a strong supply of personal protective equipment. Our operations team is actively getting those PPE supplies and equipment out to our campuses. Each campus has received signage, hand sanitizer, disinfecting supplies to support staff, and also face covering. Principals have received touchless thermometers during the in-person training, and additional supplies are on their way so that principals can prepare more staff members as more individuals return to work. Again, much like the previous question about staff members not using that PPE, if there is a specific campus, one of our 143 campuses, where that is a challenge, please share that information with the school site leader. We also have our executive directors who are supervising principals in one vertically aligned pyramid. Those individuals can also be of help. So communication is going to be key. If we need to encourage our leaders and our staff to either wear their PPE, or operations staff needs to get it out to certain campuses, we need to know that. So thank you for that information.
All right. So we are going to go back to some live questions. So we've got Stephen S. who wants to ask a question. Stephen, just a quick reminder, if you will ask the question that you have, please make sure to unmute yourself when you come on.
Yes.
Hello, Stephen, go ahead.
Hi. I was just going to ask if the community spread is not at or below 5% in October, will the board request a additional 4 weeks? And if so, granted, what if we're not at 5% at the end of the 4 weeks as well? What will the board do at that point?
I'll allow the trustees to chime in if they would like. I know, again, these are such fluid numbers. We want that positive percentage to decrease and then remain at the lower level. I've found during this time since March, predicting what might happen in a week or two is difficult because things are changing. But I certainly would recommend to the board that until the 7-day rolling average of positive cases decreases and remains at a low level, then that we continue virtually. The TEA does allow an additional 4-week extension. We know that our surrounding districts are also starting virtually: Arlington ISD, Eagle Mountain, Saginaw, Castleberry, Crowley, others, and we want to make sure that that we have this under control in Tarrant County. But that's my perspective.
I think that also goes back to looking at lots of different pieces of information. When we're making these decisions, we're not just using one piece of data. We're getting feedback from lots of different sources. And so that is one very important, significant piece of data that we'll need to look at, but there's more to making that decision than just one that it's important, but there's more to making that decision than just that one piece of data.
Thank you, Ms. Dar. Ms. Paz, I know you were going to say something.
Well, Daphne also looked like she was moving forward, so I don't want to. She hasn't spoken much, so I don't want to dominate. Okay, yeah. So exactly what Ann said. We have, and I'm just speaking for me as one board member. This is my perspective, but we none of us have a crystal ball. We don't know what it's going to look like on October 5th. It could look very much the same. It could look very different. My hope is that we are going to be on a positive trend, that we are going to have a reduction in cases, and our spread is going to be reducing so much that we can get our children back in the classrooms. At the same time, I am, as a parent of 2 Fort Worth ISD children, I am not willing to allow my children to be a test case for how this thing is going to spread in our schools. And Fort Worth ISD schools are very different from other campuses. You know, we are an urban school district. We are an inner city school district. We and the school districts with our profile, they look like the schools that we have, which are very much overcrowded and underfunded. And when we don't have the resources to safely bring children back, and this has become a political football at the state and national level about funding, it really hinders our ability to make decisions about what is best for our kids, because especially when funding is on the line. But we have to, I don't know what we're going to do. If we're not there on October 5th, I, as one, am willing to say let's keep going virtual. If 4 weeks after that we're still not there, I am willing to say to the state and to the federal government that, take our funding if that's what you want. I don't think that it is constitutional for them to do so. But I'm also not an attorney. But we are going to be making evidence-based decisions, not political decisions.
Thank you, Ms. Paz. And Ms. Brookins, I'm sorry I overlooked you.
No, she actually took the words right out of my mouth, what I was going to say. So we're pretty much on the same page, but I just want our community to know that before we let our students go back to school, we need to make sure that we are looking at their best interest at hand. Sure that we're doing everything that we possibly can to try to prevent this from happening. I mean, there's so many uncertainties. It's almost impossible not to have anything happen, but we are definitely trying to do the best that we can to make sure that we don't have that, and want to make sure that when our students do go back to school, that we have done all that we can do and have taken every safety precaution there is.
Thank you for that, Ms. Brookins. So we do have another question. The question is from Mary. Mary, if you'll go ahead and unmute yourself. Go ahead.
Hello.
Yes.
Hi. I have a question about how parents and citizens can best advocate for funding for our school district. I know that money that came from the federal government to TEA through the CARES grant was replaced dollar for dollar in the spring. And I would like to know from Dr. Scribner what we should be requesting from TEA should future grant money come.
Well, thank you for that question. I know that there are several organizations who have been participating, communicating in this process. You're right that the CARES dollars that arrived from the federal government actually remained at the state level. In essence, Fort Worth ISD was to receive an additional $29 million. So what took place was the state contribution was decreased by 29, and the CARES money backfilled that 29. So really it was level funding. It was a wash, if you will. As we move forward in January, when we start our next legislative session, we're going to need all the help we can get. We know what happened back in 2011 during the Great Recession, that the state saw a significant hit to its budget, and public schools lost over $5 billion. We certainly cannot afford for that to happen this time around. This is a very different recession. In fact, it's actually a public health crisis that we cannot allow to become an educational crisis. So I serve as the president of the Texas Urban Council, representing the large urban districts in across the state. And I'll be down at the legislature a great deal. Mary, you certainly are invited to join our PTA group, who's done great work. Mr. Montalvo is our new president, and he'll be a voice in Austin. Anything we can do to remind our legislators that education is economic development, that our schools must be funded. Again, we're spending tens of millions of dollars on PPE and on additional Wi-Fi access and digital access and devices. We are going to need more money, not less. But I think we're going to be fighting to remain at the current level this next session. But the voices of our parents and are among the strongest when we speak to our legislators and participate in the electoral process.
Thank you for that, Dr. Scribner. We're going to take one more live question. It's from April Jack. She has a question about social distancing on buses. April, go ahead and unmute yourself. April?
Yes.
Go ahead.
What is the plan for children, for social distancing on a bus, especially as it pertains to special needs children, being as they can't wear masks?
Thank you for that question, April. And this actually is a great question to follow up from Mary's question around budget, because, for example, in order to keep the numbers of bus riders cut in half, logically we would think that we would be doing two routes, an early route and a later route. Now that would be if 100% of the students were participating in person. Since we know that our numbers are somewhere around 50-50, 40-60 in terms of the parents who would choose for in-person versus the parents who would choose for virtual, that by itself will limit the number of students participating on a bus, riding the bus. The other piece too, on the if I may take a point of personal privilege, on the CARES Act dollars, one thing that parents may want to remember is that the CARES Act has dollar for dollar with some private schools. So those dollars are in fact also going to private schools, and we know that the need for appropriate funding, where 90% of our students attend here in public schools, is essential if we're going to have a functioning economy. So with regard back to the buses, we have no more than 2 students per seat, requiring masks for those students who are developmentally appropriate to wear masks. Special needs, we have special needs buses, and we'll have to work with those students individually. But the idea is that when we are able to go back in person, we are expecting that we won't have a full 100% student participation in person. Again, the bottom line is getting substantial community spread under control, wearing masks where possible, maximum of 2 students to a seat. And if we need to do more routes, we'll do more routes. But by doing more routes, we will need additional funding, because that will increase our expenditures with regard to transportation. These are unprecedented times. You've heard that 100 times already, and we have to take unprecedented action.
Thank you for that. Anybody else want to respond to that? Well, I do want to share with you, just as we get ready to move into the Slido questions, what we've done is we've clustered some of the questions that are similar, so that we can ask the question from Slido that is most pressing from our audience. So please know that we do cluster those questions. And thank you all for joining us tonight. We've had 134 members on this webinar. We've had 365 on our Facebook Live, 452 on our YouTube. So we appreciate you joining the conversation. The comments, the questions, the suggestions are very helpful as our district helps to continue to adjust and make any kind of decisions necessary, as Dr. Scribner just said, in these unprecedented times, because we know it's super important to try to meet the needs of your students as best as possible. So we are going to go with the next question, and then after that we will transition and have some final thoughts from our panel today. So our next question is, what is being done to not recirculate air, increase air exchange with outside air? Windows don't open.
So again, we have some older buildings. 60% of our buildings built before 1960. Thanks to our community and our board for setting in motion the 2017 bond. All of our HVAC, that is heating, ventilation, and air conditioning units, are being adjusted to increase outside air flow in, much like in your vehicle where you can have recirculating air, or you can push that button and it's air coming in from the outside. Our HVAC systems are being programmed to bring in more outside air, extend the their run times rather, and have 3 complete exchanges of air before any individual reports to school. So that's happening overnight in the morning. Our filters are being upgraded where possible, and other methods to combat viruses in the air are being investigated. I received many emails from vendors claiming that they have a solution and air filters that will kill the coronavirus. We want to vet those and consider those and make sure that we are implementing the most effective and most current solution.
Thank you. And I know the next question coming up is a similar question about our staff needs. And so again, I'm going to announce that we will have a staff town hall on August 19th at 1 p.m. where we will have some district personnel who will be answering some of the questions that you may have. But we're going to do our very best to answer those as
sure. Yeah. No. And again, if there's a specific campus issue, whether it's Wi-Fi or air conditioning, we want to know. We want to address that right away. If this question may have to do with our construction that really has moved along rapidly. Interestingly, another silver lining, the bond work is really moving along very at a very rapid pace. Not only the construction of our new elementary and new specialty school, but also the redo of many of our high schools. But those renovations are taking place. Our capital improvement program and staff and maintenance staff are working with our campus leaders who, as I said, have been on campus now for several weeks to ensure that our buildings will be ready for staff who return to campus today and in the coming days, but also for our students when they eventually return, hopefully as soon as possible. We'll work with our student and school support teams to ensure that we're aware of any campus issues. Wi-Fi is going to be crucial this year with regard to making sure that we can communicate with our community and our community can communicate with us. Air conditioning, as I said, these are issues that as staff return, we get ready to start the school year. We need to know where the problems are so we can solve them.
Thank you for that, Dr. Scribner. Our next question is, you push the calendar to give teachers more time to prepare, but their contract starts on the 31st. 1 week is not enough to prepare for online teaching.
We agree. And this is the reason that we've released our professional learning offerings for virtual instruction last week when we made this decision the week prior. We're encouraging our teachers to engage in their professional learning specific to the fall virtual learning instruction. Many of them have taken advantage of that. We know that the training time will be given back to our teachers during the week of August 31st if they desire that. Many of our teachers are absolutely committed to getting as much of that learning as possible. And some of our teachers actually are technology experts and are the ones who are helping their colleagues through that professional development. We want to better prepare the virtual classroom. As I said, virtual in Fort Worth ISD this fall will be a 2.0 version, a much different, much improved as compared to last spring. As teachers are beginning to take advantage of those offerings, they're developing virtual lessons and practicing their delivery of virtual instruction. Because as you remember, the asynchronous instruction, synchronous instruction with the group, the standard group during the 4 hours in the day is important, but making sure that's quality instruction for when it is recorded and shown at a later date, so we can have follow-up with our teachers. That's also going to be a requirement that it be quality instruction.
Thank you for that. And there was an email that came out from Mr. Moore that shared all of those different professional developments that are being offered at this time. So the next question that we have on here is, can support staff be required to work from campus alternate days, working on campus and from home to lessen exposure, Monday, Wednesday, Friday, or Tuesday, Thursday on campus, or vice versa?
Right. Well, again, the best place for our students to be is on campus. We're starting 100% virtual in order to address the substantial community spread. We want to reduce the risk with less individuals on campus. But remember, our core mission is that of teaching and learning. So the best place for our support students and families to be is on campus. We certainly want to get there. As I said earlier, the social and emotional challenges are significant. Schools are more often than not the first reporter, the place where these challenges, these terrible things that may be happening in homes, those are reported by a school teacher, by a school counselor, by a school resource officer. We want to make sure that we have that kind of access and connection. Our equity division, Doreen, you're part of that, and the front porch visits this summer were significant with the social worker. Our principals have an idea, of course, not 100%, but we know which families need our support, and we want to make sure that we have as much of a two-way flow of information as possible to discover the needs that exist in families, in households that we may not suspect. So we really want to stay on top of this. This is a key issue, and really breaks my heart that we're in this scenario. Every one of us wants to get back to teaching and learning. Some for economic reasons, some for academic reasons, and some for these kind of mental and health and social and emotional reasons and safety for our students. And all of us agree that those are all connected.
Thank you for that. The next question is similar to what you were already sharing about the mental and well-being of our students, emotional well-being of our students. And they're saying that the stats show that this is bigger than the concern of COVID, and our choice has been stripped away. So I'm not sure exactly what the question is asking, but I think they want to know if we're going to do something for social emotional. Yeah. And I know you shared that earlier, but if you want to just maybe elaborate.
Yeah, sure. And a couple of the participants have already mentioned the great work that's being done by Jerry Moore, our Chief Academic Officer. And he's committed to me that we're working to integrate our social and emotional learning into the lessons and into the day. And as I said, in these first week or weeks of the year, that connection is going to be so essential. Last spring, teachers had an opportunity to meet and live with their students during the school day, their students before engaging with them on Zoom. So integrating that social and emotional learning into lessons during the day is essential to build relationships, to learn, and to hopefully pick up on any needs that may exist. We want to support our students socially and emotionally before they can learn content. As I said earlier, as a former high school counselor myself, connection must take place before content will be absorbed. And I know this is not a question, but it really pushed a button in me in the need that we're really going to have to work with our teachers and our principals and our counselors to reach out as much as possible, whether it's those front porch visits or during office hours or in small groups, to ensure we're learning as much about our students and what their needs are.
And Dr. Scribner, if you allow me, I have actually had the opportunity to collaborate with a team who's working to embed some of the social emotional learning, either lessons or strategies into the curriculum. And so we are doing that through restorative practices, through counseling, through intervention, through trauma, because we want to make sure that our kids are getting all the support that they need. And so there's, from day one, we're going to have some really great activities and lessons embedded into the curriculum so that we can start to build the relationships and really listen to our students as they return to virtual learning. And then, going forward, we want to make sure that they're being supported as much as possible so that we can hear what their concerns are. We are going to begin to start to wrap up with some final thoughts. I want to say thank you to everyone who submitted their questions through Slido or did it through live chat today. We really appreciate that. Also, for those of you who may have joined the conversation late, we will have this posted on our YouTube page and also on Facebook Live. So please know that you can always reference back to YouTube and or Facebook Live. We will start our final thoughts with Dr. Scribner, and then we will go to Ms. Brookins after that.
Well, thank you very much, Doreen, and thank you to our trustees for listening to our community. And I know that this information certainly will help us formulate good decisions moving forward. We really are entering into a new world. I saw one of the last Slido questions that we didn't get to was about the principal kickoff. I talked about how proud we were of the work that's been done as we prepare for the opening of school. Principal kickoff was held both virtually and in person. Once we are able to all come together, I am very, very excited about inviting our faculty, our staff, and our community to the new Teaching and Learning Center, which is on Bridgewood in East Fort Worth. It is a completely remodeled former Kroger grocery store that is now our professional development location, one of a few as we move forward in our plans. The kickoff was in person, but held in small groups. In fact, the large room at Bridgewood holds 500 people. Until that building was finished, I was one of the few large urban superintendents who did not have a room large enough to meet with all of our principals and assistant principals at the same time. Again, these are post-COVID hopes when we can bring the groups back together. But I think you're gonna like that very, very much. It's going to be a great opportunity not only for our principals but for our teachers also to engage in professional learning. This is our fourth virtual town hall. As Doreen's mentioned a couple times, we have a staff town hall scheduled coming up. We will have more in both English and Spanish. I know our equity division is also preparing to hold two town halls. Again, we certainly want to listen to our community, learn from our community so that we can lead, and understanding that we serve 209 square miles, very, very diverse student population. We're rich in diversity, and that really is an asset of the city of Fort Worth, and I'm proud to lead our over 10,000 students and over 10,000 employees and over 80,000 students. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Scribner. I'm going to start with Ms. Brookins, and I'll go down the line of all of our board trustees. Ms. Brookins.
I just want to thank Dr. Scribner and Karen for inviting me to participate on this virtual town hall meeting this evening. It was very enlightening. I learned a lot listening to Dr. Scribner and our community and actually reading the comments as we were going through the whole process. I just have one last comment, and I wanted to go back to something that Trustee Dar brought up about our decisions about postponing school until September. You know, you hear a lot of talk about how our students are resilient with the virus, that they're not getting sick as much, or they're not dying or passing away as quickly, and they're able to recover. But you have to think about this, though. our supportive staff and our teachers are not as resilient. And so we want to make sure that everybody can do that, is to look at all the facts and to make sure that we are doing the right thing for everybody. So I just want the community to really think about that when September comes around and we have to make another decision, why we are making the decisions that we are. Because once you lose somebody, it's forever. Thank you.
Thank you for that, Trustee Brookins. I'm going to go now to Ms. Dar.
Thank you very much, and thank you for moderating. You do a great job, Dr. Benavides, moderating these events. So I really appreciate your work in making this happen. I recognize that this is not a staff or teacher town hall, but I do know that many of them are watching, and I would like to specifically address them for just a moment, if you'll allow me that privilege. It saddens me that some of our teachers have been vilified by members of our community. And even though teachers, you don't officially return to work until August 24th for new teachers and August 31st for returning teachers, I am consistently witnessing Fort Worth ISD professionals using their time off, their personal time without pay, to learn, to grow, to plan, and to prepare for student learning and success. So thank you for doing that. I know that you take it very personally when students decide to attend another school, and I know that that hurts. I trust you to provide an excellent education to students both in the classroom and by way of a virtual platform. To quote a Fort Worth ISD administrator that I had some interaction with a couple of weeks ago, she said, and I completely agree with this, I truly believe that educators are some of the best problem solvers and innovators that this world has to offer. We can do this work and we can do it well. So teachers, please know that you are valued, you are loved, you are respected, and you are appreciated. I also have been doing a lot of thinking, sometimes about 3 o'clock in the morning, but I've been doing a lot of thinking about where, as a trustee, I have to stand on some of these issues. And what I've come up with are 4 different statements, so to speak. Number 1, I truly believe that the health and the safety of students, teachers, staff, and the greater Fort Worth community must be our first priority. We have to prioritize health and safety. Number 2, I truly believe that the best place for students to learn is in a classroom with a teacher, but it is not the only place that a student can learn. Number 3, I believe that options and choice are very important. However, when my opportunity to choose eliminates someone else's opportunity to choose, then a counterproductive imbalance results. And that's not the way that a school district can function in a healthy way either. And number 4, I truly believe that we must do a better job of caring for each other with our words, with our actions, myself included. It is everyone's responsibility to mitigate the effects of this virus on our community. It is also everyone's responsibility to make sure that we are modeling for our children how to be resilient, modeling for our children how to care for each other, and modeling for our children what it means to be adaptable and flexible and to be disappointed, because disappointment is a part of life, and frustration is a part of life, and anger is a part of life. And we need to be modeling for our children how to manage these feelings of frustration and disappointment and anger, and sometimes relief as well. So I appreciate this opportunity. I appreciate my colleagues that I serve with on this board. I appreciate the central administration staff who have been working tirelessly throughout the summer. And I also applaud all those teachers who are doing the work on their own time to make this happen for kids in Fort Worth ISD. Please know that your work and your hard work and your effort do not go unnoticed or unappreciated. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Dar. Ms. Paz?
Yes, It is. And so I would like to thank everyone who has taken the time to tune in tonight, my colleagues here on the panel for giving their time, especially President Ramos, who is in the middle of writing chapter 3 of his dissertation and has cut time out just for this. And I hope that everyone feels that they have been heard and that you know that while no one is going to be 100% happy with the decisions that we make, we are hearing you, and we will continue to hold these sessions, and we will continue to use the feedback that we receive in these sessions to inform the decisions that we make. And really, so I think that what Trustee Dar has said is beautiful, and I could not state it better. We are, this is something that no one, this disease didn't come with the guidebook. And we live in a world that is impermanent or constantly changing. And COVID has forced our way of living and doing business to change at a much faster rate than what we are used to. And that is uncomfortable for everyone involved. Our goal as a board and as a district is to get our students back in classrooms as quickly as possible, but most importantly, as safely as possible. We have tasked the administration with developing guidelines that work for our Fort Worth ISD community to identify the pacing and the stage of community spread to guide our reopening decisions. And we want to move forward, like I've said, with evidence-based decision making. And I think that it is important to acknowledge that education and our society as a whole is going to look very different as we move forward. I can see that how many of the strategies that we are implementing today and in the coming week to respond to COVID being answers to longtime challenges that public education has faced. We have put technology into the hands of thousands of families that previously didn't have that access. Our community has rallied around the food insecure to make sure that families have access to healthy food without having to jump through a bunch of hoops to get it. And we as a society are having a much more intentional dialogue around mental health and family violence and social and emotional learning. And there's a narrative out there that children are unsafe in their homes and that children are suffering mentally because they are at home. And I fully denounce that idea that my children, the healthiest place for my children to be is in my home, and it is my responsibility as a parent to make sure that their social and emotional needs are being fulfilled. And I do not believe that there is a single parent in Fort Worth ISD who doesn't feel the same way, that they have the responsibility for the mental and physical health of their children. I'm not going to get into all of the reasons why those ideas might exist, but ultimately, we as a district have been able to work with community partners and to develop teams that are providing resources for families so that they have access to providing that mental health care and strategies for addressing mental health and in the home and with the family. And I see moving forward us being able to do much more of that. But ultimately, all of these solutions that I've just talked about, they also address systemic disparities that Black and Brown students specifically have faced since before COVID. And now that we have these solutions, they don't have to go away after when COVID subsides. These are things that I think will be positive for a very long time. And so, you know, I've never been accused of being Pollyanna, but I do try to look at the bright side and look at the positive things that we can pull from this experience. And I've been very proud of our district and the way that they have responded to these needs, especially over this summer once we got through the emergency of the spring, and we had time to take a step back and breathe and think forward with innovation. So thank you to Dr. Scribner for your leadership, and everyone within the Fort Worth ISD administration for putting kids first.
Thank you. And President Ramos.
Well, I want to echo what everyone has said. Thank you for showing up today. Thank you for speaking your truth. Comments of all kinds of comments that have come out tonight. I'm going to say this is the plus of having, again, 9 single member district, 9 different human beings with 9 different perspectives. Has done so much work leading up to these types of times where we made agreements. And part of our agreements was that we would not want safe spaces for our boardroom. We wanted brave spaces. And brave spaces meant that we would be uncomfortable, that we would lean into the discomfort so that we could have real dialogue about student outcomes. I didn't imagine myself that we would be talking about the safety and well-being of not only our students, but also our educators. Yeah. And so we did the pre-work that led up to this time for us to be able to lean into the discomfort that we have. Each single member district is not by accident. People fought for these perspectives to be at the table. People before me fought for someone like me to sit as president of this board. And I don't take that for granted. So the comments that I made, I stand by. I stand by them knowing that my voice and voices like mine have not always been welcomed and were intentionally removed and kept from the room. So I don't apologize for that. I don't apologize for my stance in fighting for the marginalized and the underrepresented. And I'm so glad to hear so many people of all parts of our town fighting for equity, fighting for our students who have gone without for so long. And I look forward to that continued support because I don't think I've always heard it. And now that I'm hearing it loud and clear from all parts of Fort Worth, especially with our mental well-being, with the physical well-being, the eating, I'm going to stand by that. These systems that surround us were not inadequately funding us by accident. There were people making very conscious decisions for that to be taking place. And here we are now, left holding the bag, having to scrape by dollar for dollar to make sure that not only our young people have what they need, but that our educators have what they need. So the perspectives that this board brings is what makes us so rich. And I'll leave this final piece that I'm not scared of speaking truth to power because I ran with 0 endorsements, supported by young people in my community that said, Cinto, fight for us. Fight for us unapologetically. And I think that that's what I've been trying to do because I've got to look at those young people in the eye to say, I'm here to make your life better because these systems have failed you long enough. And so now that we're in these conversations, I won't shy away from the conversations of race. I've been quoted as saying that races and rocket science, it's harder than rocket science. And the reason being because we don't teach about it in K through 12 school systems. Race is pervasive and it is absolutely relevant in these conversations. And I'm so proud that this board has done the work. I'm proud that the Equity and Excellence Division exists. I'm proud of the superintendent for having had the vision to do the work as well. But I'm still going to go back to the board. This board has been courageous and has been pretty unapologetic about fighting for young people and educators. And I think that we're living into that right now. So with that, my friends, I appreciate all of your time. I appreciate all the voices and all the perspectives that have come into the space. Dr. Benavides, I appreciate you moderating and leading by example.
Thank you so much. It's been my pleasure, and I want to say thank you all to everyone here and all of the previous town halls that we've had. And we've had 4 town halls, and we've heard from so many different perspectives. So I appreciate everyone who has joined us. Just a reminder, we will have a town hall just for our district staff so that we can answer some internal questions on August 19th at 1 p.m. And also, I just want to remind you that if we didn't get to your questions tonight, We did take all of those questions and we will be posting them on a Q&A as a follow-up to this town hall. And we will continue to take your questions on Let's Talk. So please submit the questions that maybe we didn't get to tonight. I do want to also take a minute and say thank you to our parents, our teachers, our students, and our community members who joined our town hall tonight. We need to hear your voice. And I know we continue to say that, but it does help all the decision making that we're making within our district. So again, have a great evening. Thank you for joining us. And we will see you at the next town hall. Good night. Buenas noches.